evening. This is the Car and Bike Dialogues. I am Siddharth Vinayak Partnkar. Every week on this show, we take an in-depth look at how the current corona crisis is affecting India's very vibrant, but of course under pressure, automobile industry. This week, it's a very different and perhaps unexpected topic of discussion for some of you because this is not an angle we typically would look at. But yes, we are looking at every end and each corner of what's affected. Automobile press, the media, how is it dealing with the crisis? Because, things have been tough. There have been a whole lot of lockdowns in place. There still are in many parts of the country. And auto press really needs to be out there on the road driving. There's a lot of travel usually. All of that has come to an absolute grinding halt. And then you take into account even the reportage, because even launches, well, there are a few that have gone digital, but for the most part, normal is out of the window. And so we are going to talk about that with our special lineup today. I am happy to share with you a really great lineup. It's Horma Sarabji, who's the editor at Autocar India. We've got Gaurav Sinha, who handles marketing and PR at Audi India, and Kushan Mitra is managing editor at The Pioneer. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you for being with us on Car and Bike Dialogues. As I said, unconventional topic, and so let's get a little lay of the land, if you will. Gaurav, to you first. Give us a sense of how you have seen this last few months, not just unfold, but also the impact of that.
Thank you, Siddharth, for inviting me and having me here. Yes, it is something which is came out of the blue, and none of us were prepared to handle it, even on a personal aspect and on a business aspect. But specifically, going back to the topic what you talked about, it is something which had disrupted the engagement from an OEM brand perspective as well as from the media perspective. But what I think so, what it also did was expedited a lot of changes which especially on the area of the digitalization, which was supposed to happen in even the field of OEM brands and media interaction, it expedited. So yes, while it threw up a lot of challenges, but I also, on a positive side, I feel it expedited a lot of changes and we moved from there. But like you rightly said, there have been a lot of things which got impacted with this, and we are still in an evolving situation. There are many aspects where we don't have a clear answer on where we will reach. But as it is evolving, we are all also finding our ways as we go along.
All right, so accelerating some things which perhaps are good, which should have happened anyway. And then, of course, as you mentioned, dealing with challenges as they come, because, by the way, those challenges are still coming thick and fast. Hormas, to you next. Good evening. And, this whole aspect of not being prepared, obviously for something like this, you really can't be. But after that initial shock, wore off and everybody was working from home, do you think we figured out a way now to, get on with it in a fairly efficient manner?
Definitely. I think, it did come as an absolute shock. It came as a body blow. And clearly, none of us were prepared. It impacted a lot of us in terms of content, especially in terms of business. So I think really it was something which, I think April was really a black month in that sense. But I would say that month, hopefully the worst is behind us with that as we are slowly kind of unlocking ourselves. But I think a couple of things are clearly, taking from what Gaurav said, digitally, that's where all of us have focused. And despite being a traditional print product where we are rooted in print, but thankfully we've, really kind of ramped up our digital play as well, especially on social media, because that's what you do to keep your readers engaged. We've had kind of, let's say, records being hit. We've just crossed 500K on Instagram, and rapidly done so. All our other platforms are growing quite rapidly. So that's something which we pushed over there. But I think the bigger challenge really is content, because, we need to drive cars and write about them. And that's really been where we've not had enough of that. So I think that's really been a bit of a struggle, I would say. Now, fortunately, there are a lot of launches coming out. So I think what we've also reconciled our fact to is this new way of, let's say, reviewing cars. They're made available in the places where we are headquartered. And actually, I quite like that, because One thing I don't miss, funnily enough, is getting on a plane. It's always a stressful thing, getting on a plane, getting up early, security queues, all that. I must say these 4 months given me a great detox from that sort of travel. I don't know about you guys. And I think the other thing also is that, these new digital launches, it's a new way of kind of getting information. So we have to kind of wrap ourselves around that, because our job is getting information. Ideally, I would like to meet people, sidle up to them, just after the launch, in the sidelines, in the corridors. You get a lot more FaceTime with people. Sure. You get more information that way. But I think this is, I think the new normal for a while, and we are coping. And just one last thing I would like to say, the work from home, that's also accelerated. I think that's really working fine. And in fact, it's really making us relook at how big an office do we really need, because I think a lot of people can work from home and work better from home.
Sure. And, I have to say that you're not the only one who's saying that. I think across the corporate landscape, across sectors, we are hearing this about, how maybe you don't need some of the trappings of what otherwise, involve your professional daily life. Speaking of being rooted in print, Kushan, give me a sense, not just of the auto part of it, but in general, media has been really badly hit. There is no doubt in any crisis like this that's bound to happen, perhaps. But in particular, given the fact that the end is still not in sight, just how bad is it for media right now?
Oh. So that, to be very honest, I was just discussing earlier today morning that with someone, we had planned that the first quarter was gone. April, May, June has gone. I don't think any of us had back in April thought this would carry on till September, maybe October. The big problem for us is we don't have an end date. It's a huge problem. It's distribution has been a massive challenge for the print media. Newspapers still can be distributed by our disaggregated printing model because, we're printing in different centers. But I'm sure Hormaz has had problems distributing his magazine outside the Mumbai zone. I know the Delhi-based magazines can only distribute in the NCR. It's been a huge challenge. And the fact of the matter is, due to whatever causes in the past, we have become a tertiary industry. We depend, we are not selling anything to the consumer. We're really not making that much money from the consumer. Our cover prices don't cover much. And that's the same. I mean, even for television is pretty much free to air on cable networks. You're not really paying for the news. The consumer is not paying for the news. So we depend on advertising support across the board, whether it's government advertising or private advertising, corporate advertising. And because the economy is down, that's been hit as well. And everybody's suffering from that. I mean, it would be a lie for me to say that it's not happening. But I do see the auto industry coming back slightly. I do see some more noise from the auto industry with all these launches we've had in the recent past and the ones that are coming up in the next couple of weeks. I think things are looking up. I don't think they'll be getting back to 2018 sales levels anytime soon. As you know, we were already on a slight downswing before all this happened.
Yes.
But things are looking up a bit now.
All right. Firstly, I have to say that all of you are sporting your lockdown looks. So, at least there's the new model year look that you are all sporting. But Gaurav, this aspect of let's make sure that we can all go digital, streamline a few things, maybe even look for efficiencies and cut costs. That's always been something that was sort of in the works. And as you mentioned, a lot of that got accelerated. So that's the upside. The downside, obviously, is sales are hit. Now, that's the extreme downside. But let's talk about that middle ground a little bit in terms of, firstly, no end in sight. So we still don't know when it's coming back. Secondly, it's one thing to say that we'll convert things and go digital. Digital sales, I mean, not just for your segment, which is, yes, the luxury set, but across the board. Is that realistic to think about a lot of those sales moving to being digital maybe forever?
So before I come to your direct question, let me also say something here, Siddharth. Ultimately, the car is an emotional product. When somebody buys a car, it's an emotional product. And therefore, it is very important for brands like ours, which Audi is an emotional brand, to have that emotional connect. And that emotional connect is not only just with the end customer or the partners, but it is also connect with the media. when you and the other journalists come and interact with us on our products, have a discussion with engineers, designers, even from the marketing perspective and business perspective, there is a lot more vibrancy to exchange, and therefore the content gets created, which is ultimately consumed. So on that aspect, there is obviously a big limitation which is happening. While the content is getting created and getting transferred to the journalist and through them to the end customer in a digital fashion, but I think so that we are missing that emotional connect and the interpersonal skills. Coming back to the specific things, what you were talking about in terms of digital, these are early days in terms of digital retail, especially in high ticket items and high value purchases. Data there clearly proves that while you have the engagement ratios as very high, but yes, the end transactions are not as at the level which will make comfortable for OEMs like us. But this is an evolving situation, and to be very honest with you, if we have to find a middle ground after this pandemic, if this is the way to go, at least there is some movement ahead. Is it enough? Definitely not. But yes, we are seeing engagements. We are seeing engagements on our AR platforms and VR platforms. We are seeing engagements on our website. Our website numbers have gone through the roof. So there is obviously more interest. But to answer specifically, the transactions are not at the level where it should be.
Oh, absolutely, and I don't think anybody realistically expects that just yet. But with the festive season, etc., coming up, at least the hope is that some of it does come back, and at least sharply enough to give us some comfort, I suppose. I do agree with what Kushan was talking about earlier, and how this is going to impact everybody financially on the media side as well. Gaurav, I don't want to ask you an unfair question, but from the point of view of your own spends, when you have your media outlays or your advertising spending in a normal year versus this kind of a year, you're obviously not just under pressure in terms of keeping those costs low, but I'm sure there are also certain directives from headquarters, right?
So, yes and no. The first media question for us to answer is a question which is not just a simple in digital and print. The question is about reach and credibility. Digital obviously provides you reach, but let me tell you very clearly, and you know me, I have a deep interest in print media for a very long time. The credibility of print, the credibility of TV, the credibility of these mediums are extremely important to brands like us, and I'm sure to other OEMs as well. So it's not very easy decision for us to say, hey, it's all digital, let's park our money there, and it's off print.
I mean, in terms of your overall spends, though, this is not about digital versus print or anything like that. Just your overall spends are obviously under pressure.
Yes, overall. Yes, the spends are directly related to the business which we do. And if business is going down, it's obvious to say that the spends are obviously also going down. At the same time, they are at a level where we are constantly evaluating how the business is moving. If business moves up, obviously with the festival season, like you said a while back, and we have quite a few important launches actually lined up at the second half of the year. And our spends would be back at the level, at least for us, specifically for what it was for last year. So we are really looking forward to the second half of the year, where from a spend perspective, we should be all right.
All right, we'll take a very short break. We have lots more to discuss in terms of how the protocols are being followed, are they being followed, and what should they be? We'll talk about that after a very short break. Keep watching Car and Bike Dialogues. Welcome back to Car and Bike Dialogues. We are engaged in a very interesting discussion, so we'll stay right with it. Guys, I want to quickly just focus on this aspect of the launches and the drives. I think the launches going digital is not something that anybody really had to get their head around. The drives, though, have become difficult to sort of implement or even get our hands on the vehicles that we need, as Hormuz was talking earlier. So question to you, Kushan and Hormuz, about the drives that you have been able to do. How reassured are you in terms of the safety aspect? Because there's two things. There's the condition and the sanitization of the vehicle. And then there's also the aspect of, having stopped somewhere. There could be a police barricade. There are lockdown zones. You don't really want to talk to people. You don't really want to interact with people. But we've all faced a little bit of that. So how comfortable are you with taking these vehicles out to test? Kushan, you first.
I have not had a problem. I drove the Honda City. I've driven a couple of the new Hyundais. A couple of luxury cars as well. I mean, I trust the car when I'm getting it. The thing I'm doing nowadays is I'm not having the company come and deliver the car to my residence or to my office. I'm going to their warehouse, leaving the car, I'm driving over there, and then picking up the car. I carry all my own sanitizer, my own gloves, my own mask, my own spray. Um, in a way, it's nicer. You get to sit in the car alone. As we all know, sometimes we have to share cars, and that's a bit of a pain first, in the first day, first drive scenario.
But you're also getting the cars a little later than you would like, right? I mean, I think that's the downside of it. You don't get it immediately when you would like it. Hormuz, has that been a problem? And also on the bike side, has it been difficult for your team?
So there are a couple of aspects to this. Taking off from where Kushan said, even we've not really had a problem testing cars. We know our routes, which are quiet spots. In any case, no one really bothers you. We've all figured out where we need to go over so many years of finding a quiet spot to drive without any interference or disturbance. I think also on the, we do get cars dropped off, we pick up, it's a mixture of both. But I think what everyone has done, companies like Honda, Hyundai, they've really sanitized the car properly. In fact, when we drove the new City, I think about half an hour went in the whole sanitization process. So they were really, really careful about it. I think in a way it's good because, on a typical media drive, like Kushan said, you have to share cars and you go down a certain fixed route. Very often you don't know what that route is, so you don't know where you're shooting. You might end up in a location you're not really comfortable with, especially when you're shooting video. If it's a narrow single lane road, Goa's typical problem. You can only shoot in Varna or near where the university is. These are the two places. If you go anywhere else, it becomes difficult. But at least in your own environment, you know the good spots where they are. You're alone, and you can spend the time with the car. The downside is, Siddharth, and we talked about this. I mean, you've driven some of the BMWs, which we haven't because they are in Delhi. So some cars are stuck in Delhi, some cars are stuck in Mumbai, and I think that's really been the problem, because I think what I would like manufacturers to do, it's easier to move vehicles than it is to move people. And I think that's where I would, request them to put a little bit more effort in the logistics side of it, is at least to make sure that some of the cars, they're in Delhi for a while, then move them to Mumbai. But otherwise, it's very difficult to get onto a plane and drive them like we would typically do that. So I think that's one big challenge which we are facing right now, is just the physical location.
Getting onto a plane at this point is an absolute no-no for every one of us, I think, in any case. So, Gaurav, you want to react to that really quickly about, it's obviously tough for you as well to try and figure out the logistics and even, the costs, the timelines involved with something like that?
So that's a very excellent point what Hormuz just made. And actually the onus is right now on us as manufacturers and OEMs to obviously find a solution to this problem. He is absolutely right. It appears easier to be moving logistics for the cars than obviously people moving. But at the same time, we are also constrained, specifically speaking for a brand like ours, where the fleets are not as big and as wide as certain mass car manufacturers. So we are also now obviously finding solutions on how to expand our fleets and make sure that not only we are geographically limited, but we are also definitely available to all kinds of medium, because ultimately the symbiotic relationship between media and brand is to make sure that the content reaches the end consumer. And if we are able to be geographically limited ourselves, then we are severely compromising that relationship.
All right, we literally have a minute to go. So from all of you, just one word each. How soon do you see this situation lifting? What's your most optimistic guess, Gaurav?
I hope it is sooner, but I realistically think we are looking at beginning of next year before things get into some settled pattern.
Right, Kushan?
I would agree with Gaurav over there. I don't think anything much will happen before 2021 at the very earliest.
All right. Orma, so I think 2020 is kind of a washout, huh?
Absolutely. I would agree with that. I mean, we do a lot of events. We are not hopeful of doing any events until in this financial year. That's our, realistic situation. So I think that's the way we're going ahead, and we're going to have to carry on like this going forward. But Siddharth, before you went, just to say, Abhay was watching the show and he said BMW will move cars. So at least something's good come out of this discussion.
That's great. Yeah, that's excellent. In fact, I've been...
So Gaurav, move your cars to Delhi as well, huh?
Definitely now the pressure is on.
Got a lot of pressure, Gaurav. Thank you, guys. I like this. I like some great solutions coming out of this. So hopefully all of us at carandbike will be very happy, along with Kushan and others, if we get our hands on some of those Audis here in Delhi. But of course,
right now.
Yes, all right, great. So we have to wrap this up. I really appreciate it, as always. Thanks, out of time, but thank you all for joining. and also being really candid with your views. I think that's the key point here, that all of us are working under a tremendous amount of pressure and constraints, and yet trying to do our very best to get all of what we do out to our end consumers. I hope all of you who've watched appreciate that effort and also understand, therefore, where we are coming from every time you ask us, hey, where's this review or where's that bike? Thank you again for joining us. Please stay safe. Please wear your masks. Please wear your seatbelts. Bye-bye.
Thank you.